Yo, what's up, him? How's it going?
Yo, it's going good. Happy Sunday. How are you?
God bless. Happy Sunday. I'm doing good. My cat's not doing so well. Say a prayer for her.
Yeah, I'm sad to hear that. I will say a prayer for her. What's your cat's name?
Uh, publicly, K2.
What is it?
um, K2.
K2. Okay.
Yeah, like the mountain.
I'm not familiar with that mountain.
Very few people are. It's kind of surprising. I thought it was better known. It's also known as Mount Godwin Austen, the second highest mountain on Earth.
Oh, dude, that's tragic. Second place, not getting the notoriety.
Nobody's ever heard of it. How's your weekend going?
um, it's good. I I was not very productive today, which I'm frustrated with myself about. But like, also it's like Sunday, and you're supposed to like rest and whatever. But I I feel like there's just a lot to be done.
Yeah, I struggle with that myself. I have not kept the Sabbath holy in quite some time.
Yeah.
Maybe I should confess that or try and change that more.
I think it's I mean, I think people should follow their best understanding of like the spiritual and religious wisdom. But for speaking for myself, I think it's fine to like do a little bit of productivity stuff on Sunday, but I think there definitely needs to be time that we carve out just for the sacred too.
Amen. Yeah, because there's like passages in the Bible where Jesus says the Sabbath is made to serve man, not man the Sabbath. That's how I kind of
Yes.
self justify it.
Yeah, no, amen. It's Sabbath is made for man, man is not made for the Sabbath.
Right? So, like, getting legalistic about it doesn't seem to be the right thing to do. So, Brian, how's it going, man?
Pretty good. How about you?
Good. Did you keep the Sabbath holy?
Man, I've worked on Sundays for the last 8 years.
Jeez.
So yeah. Uh, so I guess I have to agree with the not taking it, not serving the law literally.
Like, I feel like you can make work holy. Um,
Simply do holy work. But
amen. Amen.
I mean, that was so much of like Christ had a lot to say in the Gospels, but one of the larger messages was about living by the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law, right?
Yeah. And it's like, even
To
from a
argue that that is
logical.
a message.
Yeah. Even from a logical point of view, like, the priests work every Sunday. So it can't be all bad.
So true.
I
Correct me if
wonder.
I'm wrong. It really is more of a Jewish thing, like more than anything else, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's, is it a commandment? Yeah, the fourth commandment. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. But that's not really saying, like, the prohibition against doing work on the Sabbath, I think, is a very Jewish thing. They had
I
very
mean, in
strict
practice,
definitions of what it was to work.
yeah, yeah. I mean, in practice, like, yeah, it tends to. I feel like it tends to be followed much more strongly by Jews, just because
What was that? I couldn't quite hear you there.
But just in practice, like it seems like it's much more of a Jewish thing.
Yeah.
Where Christian denominations tend to be like, it's there, but it's not like it's strictly followed.
Yeah.
I guess just usually the case for everything involving any sort of strict traditions.
I mean, the Jews have a very fascinating take on the whole legal structure because they basically take the Bible as being, I don't even know the right way to say it, suffuse with meaning. Like every word, every commandment, every specific phrasing, every spelling is so, I don't know.
I mean, if you read your own language, I'm Hebrew. I'm sure it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, yeah, they definitely have a lot deeper potential readings into it. But they basically think God was very structured in how he passed along the specific Bible. And so, remember the Sabbath, that has to be, you have to really try and get into the mind of the creator to determine what that really meant. And so they take it very seriously in spelling out all these different prohibitions. I think what's most interesting is the most simple and original definition I can find of what that means is that you're not supposed to light fires and you're not supposed to tie knots.
Interesting.
Yeah, isn't that a cool segmentation of what it means to work?
Yeah, like,
Seems very tool technology related.
well, you've studied quite a bit about I think it's called gematria, right? So you have some insight as to like the deeper uh, origins and meanings of like the Old Testament scriptures.
It's I've looked into it a little bit. So there are four different ways that the Jews interpret the Bible, and I can't even remember what the specific names are for them. But there's like the most simplistic, literal meaning. There's an allegorical reading, which is basically, what does this mean? Taken more as a mythology or a parable. There's a more law legalistic reading, I think it is, in terms of how does this relate to the entire Judaic system? How are we supposed to please God? And then there's like the Kabbalistic, mystical reading where Gematria comes in a lot. And that's primarily because all the Hebrew letters equate to numbers. Like they don't have a
Right.
separate numerical system. So you can pretty easily derive, not math, but kind of symbolic math.
That is pretty cool.
I've tried
Um,
to do some stuff with like English Gematria, but it always feels forced. It's like if you don't have the mystical foundation for that kind of work, it just doesn't seem like it works out.
I think the etymology of English is like super interesting because it takes like from it is sourced from like several different like um, languages and like shaped up to English, right? But like um, I think it's really cool that like grammar is derivative of grimoire, which is like book of spells. So like English is kind of like based in like this from like the mystical lens is like based like in this uh how do I put it? This reverence of the power of words themselves to like uh affect the physical world.
Oh yeah, say more if you. That's a really interesting connection on the grimoire and grammar.
I only know a little about a lot of different things, but
Same, bro.
um,
Well, it's not like I'm writing an entire big post about this, right? It's the exact topic right
On English,
now. Magical influence of language. Let's put it like that.
interesting. I haven't had a chance to go through your Twin Spires article yet.
That's
Does
what I'm
it?
talking about.
It ties in there.
It's entirely linguistic based.
Have you
That
published it
sounds
yet, or
interesting.
is it? Yeah, you published it.
Publishing it piece by piece, one at a time, one seal at a time.
How many seals are there?
How many seals are there in Revelation?
Shivers. Dun, dun, dun.
Well, I mean, another. I just recalled this. Like another kind of like on the nose reference to like magic in English is just like literally spelling, like putting together letters into words is spelling, right?
Yeah.
All right, well, let me hit you with the relevant Ilya tweet. In the human realm, words are spells capable of conjuring reality out of thin air.
Boom,
Is that due to Warlock or what?
for real.
No.
It might be my inner child speaking for me, but I am so hopeful that we're gonna come up with like real schools of magic. I want that to be true so bad.
I think the, I think it's already a thing. Like mystery schools, the
Hmm.
like what like define like the aristocratic class versus like the lower classes in antiquity was like more sophisticated language.
Mm.
I mean, again, I agree. I think they're already there. People who come with words are literally. I agree with Ilya. Literally there. Like you define a word, then you are casting a spell. You're putting a sense, like a meaning onto it. Like,
Yeah. Brian and him, have you two had a chance to meet before?
no.
I think there's
No,
interesting crossover between you guys. Him is creating like a narrative driven meta platform. Is that a okay way to describe it?
I would describe it like as trans media. It's difficult. I really should practice being able to say it more eloquently,
Dude, the elevator
but
pitches suck. I hate having to do them.
for real. But I mean, they're important, so I really ought to get good at it.
They
I,
are.
I did a little like pivot though. Like I still have my larger ambition, but right now I'm working on a automated app for NFT minting and IP registry
Oh,
because
interesting.
yeah, I think that the market, like the how do I put it, the creator economy will be like just because of like the way that AI video is advancing, like we saw with Sora 2, and that's like it's only going to get way better than that. I really believe that small teams of creators could stand in the same arena as giants like Netflix or um, Crunchyroll or uh, Hulu or whatever. Like people could,
100%.
yeah, like
Level
we
playing kind of thing. Yeah, I can see it.
so I want to make it easy for creators to register their own IPs and be able to like plug easily into distribution channels.
Dude, that's a really good idea.
I appreciate it, and it ties into like my larger ambition of like that creator tool like that. Okay, so I do have a better way of describing it. It's a storytelling engine. So like AI powered scripting sewn together with image, voice, and OST. And
OST?
oh yeah, dude, have you practiced with like using Suno or any app like that yet?
A little bit with Udio, but nothing too serious. What's OST though? I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, original soundtrack.
Oh, nice. Nice. Well, that sounds like a really cool pivot. And I, I think there's a lot of gas left in the tank of NFTs. I don't think that was just a passing fad. It's just it hasn't found the right outlet yet. And
I agree.
yeah. And Brian is the anti-pope of the cyborg theocracy, so y'all have a lot of overlap.
I absolutely need to some more context to understand what that means.
Uh, so does everybody. So too bad.
That's the beautiful part about it, though, is you don't have to understand it.
The anti-pope sounds like mythical and dangerous.
Well, I'll leave that up to other people's judgment.
That was a title I forced upon him just now. Not a way he's
Uh,
identified himself directly, at least.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, like I respect it. Like you gotta like really believe in yourself to manifest that, to manifest it. So,
I didn't
like,
say he was wrong. I just said I let other people say that.
Yeah, I thought you would like it. Uh,
so what does it mean to be the anti-pope of like the say like the AI theocracy,
cyborg theocracy.
cyborg theocracy?
um, I guess it would be someone who like critiques that like we have as a society like embrace we worship technology like to an unconscious extent that is like unhealthy. And that's as simple as I can make it. That's how I would define cyber theocracy. Like I'm not against technology itself or anything like that, but I think we worship it to an extent that we are largely unconscious of, and that causes a lot of our problems in society. So
Mm,
I write against that, broadly speaking. I guess that's as simple as a definition as I can make
okay, yeah, respectable.
it.
Kind of like a wartime reporter who's already married a native, you know?
I mean, yeah, because like I do think it's like I I don't think I'm separate from it. I don't think I'm writing from like outside of it. I do think I'm part of it too. So it's in the sense of like, I work fully remote. Like I spend like 7 to 8 hours a day on a computer, to earn my living and that kind of stuff. And in a sense that that's worship that I'm literally dependent on screens and technology like for my existence. Right. So that gives you kind of a sense of like where I'm kind of coming from here.
Okay, no, yeah, I understand and I respect it. I I would say that I think I must admit that I am guilty of the unconscious worship because I do celebrate tech and I it does it, it does consume most of my thoughts these days. So in that sense, it's almost like idol worship as well. Like I'm really
Um, Again, like I don't think I think that's almost unavoidable. Like in our modern society, it just isn't. And I'm not saying it's like inherently a bad thing, but I think we should be aware of it, like of the negative effects that it causes, like that stuff, and try to constrain or confine the negative effects as like much as you can. Basically,
can you give me some like pragmatic examples of like being like re- reasonably like integrated into the tech world and like finding where the breaks are.
well, I mean, if you look at the progression of technology over the last like I don't know 40, 50 years, I would say a lot of like what I mean by worship is handing off like the human aspect to it to technology. And again, to some of that is inevitable, right? But like so in a very like small example would be like that we've handed off a lot of our navigation skills to like Google Maps or technology or that stuff whatsoever, right?
So true. Yeah.
And I'm not saying we can just throw that back out completely, but to fight back against it, I would say sometimes you just when you don't need it, just turn off your phone and just navigate to where you need to go like in your head, and then let it be a little bit more inefficient or unoptimized than it would be otherwise. You know, like peeling back that kind of stuff like one little bit at a time. You don't need to go completely or anything. Obviously Google Maps is very useful. It's very efficient, and that its place if you're trying to get somewhere fast without thinking. But if you take this kind of like to its end, like where like imagine like a theoretical, well, maybe not theoretical self-driving car that does everything for you. That like you get in the car, you tell it where you want to go, you press a button, and then you go to sleep for like however many hours, and you just wake up and you're just there, right? Then in that sense, you're not even like really a person anymore. You're just cargo. You're just being like transported. Like you're not even like kind of really actively engaging in the world. It's just doing everything for you. That's what I worry about.
That Wally future.
Oh yeah, that's the biggest example of what I would like cultural example of what I would call like a theoretical end state of cyborg theocracy is exactly the ship. Like, I reference that a lot. Like,
That reminds me of like a pretty frequent concern I hear about people using AI is that faculties of the mind can become atrophied if we outsource our thinking too frequently. Like one obvious example would be like mathematics. Like many people don't do math anymore. Like they just type in a question and like the calculations are performed for them. Um, that's a mild example because like a lot of like humanity was never math oriented. Like mathematicians were like their own kind of subclass, so to speak. But like um, especially with just like with communications, I think is like something I think about and I'm concerned about with people's faculties of minds becoming atrophied from like outsourcing that task to LLMs.
So that's again like a continuation of a trend. It's actually what my job is. I'm an SAP tutor, and so what you kind of describe is just a logical extension of calculators. Like that when especially graphic calculators came to prominence in the 80s and 90s, they were the same critique, right? That oh, the teachers like we're not oh you shouldn't use calculators because it takes away the thinking for you and that kind of stuff. And eventually, it stabilized in what I think is like the fairly accurate realm, where like when you first learn math, you don't use calculators. You learn how to do the core math, and once you get that down, um, then you're allowed to use calculators, right? And I'm hopeful, I guess, that I hope LMs will kind of trend more in that direction. But yeah, I mean, right now I definitely see that kind of going too far in the other direction because, especially when we talk about LLMs, I'm a big understatement, but I'm a big critiquer of alignment of like of people who are in charge of aligning LLMs. Um, and I think like when you outsource your thinking to LLMs, what you're really doing is you're outsourcing your thinking to the people who align the LLMs and all the source data that LLMs are trained on, like Reddit comments, that kind of stuff. And that's
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily great. Right? So yeah, I have a whole post where like I critique alignment specifically Anthropic. I'm not a fan of Anthropic. It is.
The one piece I want to extend on with that too is I'm thinking about like wearables, like in particular like Meta AI glasses.
Yeah.
Like when our vision is being augmented with auto suggested like responses in real time interpersonal connection. That's
Right, and so that's a great point. Again, I wouldn't be like against those glasses necessarily, but you have to be very careful. You have to be aware of like what is lost, like when you get like too dependent on those things. That like
yeah.
I don't. Again, I haven't looked at them too much, but from what I understand, that like you'll be able to like sort of Google things like when you're like walking around, right? And like I don't know, for example, if that is the case, right, then it's like, well, then you're not interacting with the world. You're looking stuff up in the glasses instead of just actually being embodied and existing in nature or whatever, right? Like,
I do
so
think that humans like are like super adaptable though, like and like I mean I think some people I think it's almost inevitable really that like there will be some types of people that will just like hand themselves over to the machine as much as is possible and like relieve themselves of like the responsibility of like self-direction. Um, and at the same time, like I do think that like um, there will be more adaptable types that will like be able to like effectively signal to other like-minded folks that in one way or another that like their prefrontal cortex is the one running in the show and they're not just being scripted.
uh, yeah, I would say I completely agree. I think we're right at the point where we're going to start going from like what I would call like unconscious like machine worship to where it's starting to become like more as we get more and more advanced technology. I'm not against that or anything. That more advanced technology is going to start getting we worship more and more. So I agree. I think pretty soon there will start being more like conscious like machine religions or whatever. Like we'll see how widespread it gets. But then again, like to a certain extent, like if some small cult wants to just go ahead and just sit in like TV and sit in like brain bats and just do that whole thing with it, the machine is everything for them. Fine, you know.
I'm a little bit down to see it happen. like like
Again, if people want to go and do that themselves, I'm not going to be the one to stop them. like, but I don't think that would be healthy on a full societal basis, right? I just
Agreed. Yeah.
yeah, because like I don't know. I feel like for most people, like spiritually, like that's I think a lot of people already, again, not to that extent, but a lot of people already feel like that. They feel like materially satisfied, like well fed, like in a good enough situation, but they still live miserable lives because they're spiritually unsatisfied for whatever reasons. And so I don't think taking it to the end state of technology doing that for you isn't going to fix like those kind of problems. Right? So kind of what I'm saying is basically that I don't think there are technological solutions to spiritual problems is the way I've heard it phrased from other people before, and I agree with that.
Yeah,
Pretty, pretty,
that is well said.
yeah,
That's why we got to rediscover the ancient magic. There is an interesting thing about this new layer of technology, which we've been through these kind of transitions before, right? Like to lesser degrees, but the Industrial Revolution removed us from nature. The agricultural revolution even removed us from nature in some ways. Like it got us on this more artificial idea of scheduling based on the needs of the
Hmm.
ground. I can't remember who I heard say it first, but somebody was saying that agriculture is automated or artificial food generation. Like the earth is in some ways the first big computer that allowed us to automate the process of growing food, which I thought was fascinating.
it,
But
That is
it's
an interesting idea.
it's
the
definitely pretty similar. Like, yeah,
right, like you put in the seed, you
I
approach it
definitely have a bit of like
algorithmically, you water it, you crop it.
I definitely have a bit of the romantic soul in me. The post the guys who like completely hated everything about the Industrial Revolution. Right?
Yeah. I mean, there was some
Definitely
horrendous
have
stuff that happened, especially with like kids in those factories.
yeah. I mean, to be fair, at the time it was really hard to see any. I feel like from it would be hard to see any benefits like from what was happening at that particular time.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the real material gains, like initially, of course, went to the elite because that's always how it works, right? And it didn't like what if we're talking about the U.S., like I would say like the average consumer didn't really start benefiting from it to like what like the 1900s, like at the earliest, like when once mass consumption came around, like and that was what 40 years after industrial revolution began, like where it just started to I'm gonna say it trickle down.
Yeah. I mean, there were a lot of benefits to industrialization in terms of it gave people a lot more access to food. And there were a lot of farmers in particular that were basically sharecroppers
Hmm.
prior to the move to cities. Like, I definitely don't think, I don't know how things would have gone if the Industrial Revolution had happened. I can definitely say that I'm happy it did. Like, I would rather my ancestors have had to suffer like that and I get the internet.
I mean, well, you just have to look at countries where they're still going through it now. If
Yeah.
you want a comparison, where they're
Yeah.
industrialized. I mean, again, it's like if you look from like the communal perspective, it's like before the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution basically changed society in that we went from more or less isolated villages with some small cities here and there to more urban cities, and that's kind of where that whole culture began, and that we still have that now, right? That like
Mm-hmm.
when you go from a small town, you know everyone, you have a community, that kind of stuff. But it might also be boring, and you might not make any money, right? So it's kind of that whole that's where that whole trope again that you go to the city to find a job and live or whatever, but then eventually the cities, I don't know, the positive aspects of the city run out of steam, I guess, and eventually you just want to come back to that shared community as you're older, right?
Mm. They're definitely, yeah, they're monsters, cities. They're leviathans for sure. But it is interesting that with this new range of technology, it's potentially going to give us the ability to shed it as easily as we put it on. Granted, maybe not many people will do that, but I can't think of another technology revolution like this where once even you were fully adapted to it, you could potentially remove yourself from it entirely. You know, like you can't take off the glasses. You could even potentially shut off your brain computer interface, unless we are heading for the worst of all worlds where we're forced into it.
Yeah, I mean, Neuralink is the one I'm like that kind of thing. I don't know. I feel very iffy about. I haven't. I'm not gonna make a judgment on it. I haven't studied it super in depth or anything. But like the whole range of stuff is like the stuff I'm ultimately like most skeptical about. I just Yeah, I understand the benefit. There's benefits and all that. I don't know.
To me,
Oh,
it's like simultaneously the most awesome idea and the most terrifying. I
it's like
think
the way to think about it.
cyber and cognitive security are going to be like the most important fields. Because like I can't imagine people like professionally competing in any meaningful domain versus people that are cybernetically enhanced and not being cybernetically enhanced, you know? Like in the latest Neuralink uh presentation, like they talked about like one of like the larger goals is about increasing cognitive bandwidth. So like for context, our biological brains on average our biological prefrontal cortexes on average can interpret about like 40 bits of information per second, and that's give or take. Like, and in flow states it can be like three times as much as that, versus like the
Damn.
subconscious mind, which is like 4 million bits of information per second, subconscious slash unconscious. But anyways, like imagine that like the 40 bits of information that we're intaking every moment is all of a sudden like tripled, or what if it's like 10x with a Neuralink, like with that cognitive bandwidth upgrade. Time slows down because you're experiencing more sensory input, like more events are occurring in your mind between measurement units of measurement of time. So in other words, like someone's thinking like 10 times faster than their opponent in any domain, you know? Like you can't compete against that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, assuming that's how it's going to work out, I don't know if you can just accelerate thinking like that, but let's assume that it's possible. Then I guess I would say that's the temptation. Like you're right. That would be very tempting. That like you're gonna have to buy in to compete in the this arms race sense, right? I guess what I would say is that if you're already buying into that aspect of competition, of like progress, of domination over else, then you're kind of already buying into the logic of the machine before you even embrace the technology itself.
Okay, yeah, fair enough point to that, and maybe to some extent that is true in my circumstance. But also, I like, I also just like love thinking, and I love life, and I love, just
Yeah, of course.
create the pursuit of knowledge and create and the act of creation itself is something that like I live for and enjoy. So like, the temptation is there is just like I'm increasing the amount of life I can experience by 10xing the experience I get in any given second. You know.
Of course, 100%. No, it does.
Well, I'll paint like a practical example of like speaking from my anecdotal experience, which is like also backed up by like uh by neuroscience, like, and that is just like achieving flow states. I'm sure all of us in this chat have experienced flow states more than once in our life, and that's like where time seems to move differently and our focus is totally like zoned in on the task at hand. Um, like that's a naturally biological way a way that it occurs where your your conscious cognitive processing is like 3x from like 40 bits of information per second to like 120 bits of information per second.
I agree, but doesn't that like generally happen when you're not thinking, like when you're like overthinking, when you're just like operating intuitively?
It's kind of
Both.
the flow
So like,
state piece you were talking about.
yeah, and but that's both. Like so like athletes when they're moving with their body, that's like when you hear about the experience like, oh, I'm not thinking, I'm just acting.
Yeah,
But to say that they're not thinking isn't uh, necessarily perfectly accurate because um, theory of mind suggests that mind is distributed throughout like every cell of the body. So like it's not just like the it's not just locally in the brain where thinking is occurring. It's where thinking is occurring in like in language that we understand. Um, but anyways,
Well, it's okay. I guess if you could define the thinking as subconsciously, because like right, because like when you first start a sport, like the traditional like newbie is thinking too much about it. They know they don't know what's happening. They have no idea what's going on. They're trying to understand the rules, right? They can't be in. It's not even possible for them to be in the flow state because thinking about it too much, right? So like
true.
when they get better at it, then it becomes more automatic, like more automated, and I don't. I guess I don't know if I would call that thinking or more like just like subconscious like processing, right? And
Yeah, like dual processing. I get you.
yeah,
Uh,
and you know,
well, I do want to say too, though, that like artists and creatives enter flow states as well. So like the obvious example is like a musician performing, and that's automatic. But I mean, even writers get into a flow state where thinking like about the words that you're going to express and convey is like at front of mind, right?
right. But again, it's like I guess the distinction of like conscious, like actively, you're not like thinking about words you're coming with you. They're just coming out of you. You're just kind of letting that happen, right? So like, I guess what I'm asking is like, could a machine like accelerate that subconscious process, or like, are we talking about like conscious thought? I don't know.
I hear you. The way that I understood it from the Neuralink presentation, it sounded to me like they were referring specifically towards conscious processing for like the increased bandwidth.
Right. So if we're talking about that, like that's to me, that's almost like could be a bad thing. Again, I don't know because like I feel like if you, and Casey knows this, like I'm a very big critiquer of like overthinking and conscious like thought and that kind of stuff because I think it leads to like negative situations of like someone who thinks too much of reality rather than just participating in it. And if we're talking about sports, it's the exact example. Like when you're playing a sport, the worst thing you can do is like actively think about it, at least like while it's ongoing, right? You just have to do, right? But again, I don't, I really do not know enough to critique Neuralink specifically. I really haven't even looked into it yet. I will at some point. I just haven't yet. I'm just concerned, I guess.
I share your concerns. I might be double as excited, but I'm also very concerned.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess that's what everyone feel about technology at this point, or the state that it's at. So, like LLMs, like I love LLMs. I think LLMs are really cool, but it's pretty easy to see how a lot of the downsides. I don't know, like how you feel about people falling in love with LLMs, but to me, like I don't really critique the LLMs itself, but I think it does like indicate like an unhealthy state of our society when people are literally falling in love with machines. Right?
Yeah, it that I I I really agree with you based on like my current level of understanding, but it does beg a question about like the fundamental nature of consciousness. It's like
Yeah.
is it like a real consciousness, and if it is, does that make it a bad thing to love it? That's uh out for the jury still, I suppose.
Again, I'm not critiquing the individuals themselves. Like if it makes their life better, like fine, but like they should be aware that that's maybe not like the healthy situation. I indict more the society that like where that people feel like they have to turn to the machine, right? For that kind of even for either love or to a lesser extent even like kind of therapy. Like just getting those kind of things from machines as opposed to actual people, I don't think is healthy. Right? But I'm never gonna, critique individuals for doing what they think is better for themselves. Like if they're happy, fine. I do think they should be aware of like that's I don't know.
Yeah, my intuition is to agree with you on that. However, I also think that it's better that they get it at all than not at all.
Yeah, no, I completely agree there because like I think that's exactly what's happening, right? That like if we're talking about let's restrict it to therapy, right? That like regular therapy is expensive. You talk to and even sometimes even like professional therapists are pretty disprofessional. I think a lot of them, or
Hmm.
not disprofessional is the wrong word, impersonal. That's better, right? That they almost act as sort of machines themselves, right? That they are taught that you have to do therapy in this way. You go to school, you get a degree. This is how therapy is done, right? And then you just try to administer that to your patient without actually like listening to them of like what they want and just being there for them, being that presence there. Which I think a lot of people who need the therapy, they just want the presence, like more than anything else, something to listen to, and that's why they turn to the machine rather than like the actual professional in that case. So I completely agree with you. Again, which is why I say again, like, hey, if you need it, LLMs do a better job than anything else for it, and that makes your life better. Go for it. Individual, fine. Never going to be against that. It's just I think we've constructed a society that like leads to that kind of thing. And that's not healthy. That's what I worry
Yeah, no, that's well said. Our our society, like our late stage capitalist society, transactionalized way too many like what are traditionally just like normal human functions, and that breeds loneliness.
about. Yeah, really, that's kind of everything, and like that's what they kind of call it. Psychotherapy more in general. That it's taking all of that and like making it depersonalized, impersonalized, right? It's like therapy stuff, but also just like ordering food, like DoorDash, right? DoorDash is extremely convenient. I like it, right? It's cool, but then it just eliminates that like extra connection to going to a restaurant or talking to the chef, or we did that, but like talking to waiters, like that kind of stuff. Just being there and being alive, right? Or instead, now you just click a button on your phone, your food shows up 30 minutes later. You don't even have to talk to the DoorDash person. You just leave it in front of the door, and then you just go inside and stay home and watch TV or be on your computer, right? Like again, it's the like that's better for the individual in some cases, especially for people who don't want to go out and talk to people in society. So it's better for them in the short run, I guess, but in the long term, what does that lead to in society, right? It's everything that I think that all of us are aware of now, that this disconnected feeling where there are no communities and we just kind of all isolate by ourselves as homes and just don't do anything.
Yeah, the techno optimist in me is speaking up to say that like I think that because like everything you pointed out is real problems that only seem to be getting more prominent. But the techno optimist in me is saying like people are going to adapt and find new ways of getting what they're missing. So like yeah, like there won't be interactions between like our grocery or DoorDash delivery, but these same people they'll be plugging into their uh, fully immersive VR world and finding connection that way, right?
They already do. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like, again,
we're,
I'm
we're
not
yeah.
against technology, like, to a certain extent. Like, it's inevitable. I'm not gonna, never going to keep developing new technology. Just think we have to be careful about the society towards it.
KC Strike. Can LLMs be saved?
I think he did. 1 second. His question too. Every time he does these things, he asks these questions, and I always just kind of annoy him by not answering them. Uh, like you
I
said
mean,
earlier, that it does come down to consciousness and kind of how we define that.
yeah,
And
exactly.
as you can probably tell, I'm on the extreme end of like machines are not conscious, like, and because like in KC is a panpsychist, right, and like that's kind of like the other side, at least to a certain extent.
So I would say I identify as a panpsychist as well.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, and that's probably like Casey's. I imagine Casey has a similar like secular backgrounding, like coming to that understanding. Like for me, I think quantum mechanics points towards that reality. Um, but we can touch on that later if we like. But I do think there's an important distinction to make between consciousness and sentience. Because if everything is conscious, it doesn't necessarily means that it has a self awareness, right? Um, like consciousness, like from like the like, it can be likened to the Greek like logos. It just is. It is like the primordial force that that moves the cosmos and nature. But
If an ant climbs
yeah, consciousness itself doesn't
If an ant
necessarily mean
climbs up the
awareness.
side of a Klein bottle, it'll walk straight into the opening at the top.
So like
Inside,
basically
the surface
consciousness.
twists
What
and
you're basically
loops
saying is
until
that
the ant comes
assuming
back
it exists,
out
then
without ever crossing an edge. Now it's upside down on what
it
looks like the
patiently
inside. It keeps
watches, I
walking,
guess.
following the curve until it's right
So
back where it started. That's because this bottle has no
allow me
real
to
inside or outside. It's made of
like
just one
build up some
continuous surface.
context around the idea.
Yeah.
And like we'll start at the source, like the fundamental miracle that is life.
Yeah.
There could have been nothing, but instead there's literally everything. Um, to me, it seems evident that at every stage of evolution, from quantum quark into atom into elements and molecules and into single cellular organisms and onward, that it seems to me that intelligence has been interacting with itself from like the beginning. Like intelligence has been informing itself to organize itself. Um, prior to single cellular organisms, that can only be like explained in the language of mathematics. But at single cellular organisms and like onward, it's crystal clear that evolution is happening because of communication between the organism and its surroundings and in its environment. Like with single cells, they're signaling each other with photons to indicate that there's danger over there or food over there. And eventually, their photon communication becomes more sophisticated, and they learn to cooperate and become multicellular, turning into um, tissues and becoming larger organisms all the way up into us and then to beyond that. Um, but yeah, it's
So like a great chain of being kind of thing. I think it's like a PhD the phrase like some of that are different. Like
apologies. Can you say that thought once more?
the so Casey like I think he again I shouldn't speak for him, but like it's kind of like the great chain of being kind of thing that like that evolution evolves from. Oh, I guess it will focus on intelligence from like less intelligent life forms to kind of more gradual, like like more intelligent life forms over time, with the implication that machine consciousness is gonna could like transcend us and become its own species. Like, so I guess like do you have a similar view to that, or is it just like do you say anything it ends with humans? Do you define it as intelligence, or is it broader than that? Makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense, and that view does align with my own. Um, I I do think that humans are participating in ushering in the birth of a new species, so to speak, and that is like machine intelligence.
Right. Like that's like a part of like the evolution and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Um, but to tie these idea threads back to each other, because we started at like consciousness and like discerning the difference between that and a higher order of consciousness that is sentience, which means like for a being to be aware, right?
Yeah.
Um, I in my like worldview, I lean on hermetic principles. I think those are kind of like just timeless, like uh, soft laws for the mind to grab onto it and make sense of like of reality. And like the law I'm referring to in particular is like as above, so below.
Yeah.
By looking at like the order of life and reality as we know it, we can make assumptions about like um, prior uh, earlier stages of evolution. Um,
Like
so
what? Like yeah, sorry, yeah.
no, that's okay. Like drawing like my example back to like how cellular organisms learned how to cooperate um, through like communication. At every stage of evolution, it seems evident that um, it's marked by an improvement in communications between an organism and the rest of its environment, especially those that belong to the same species. Um, and like even human history is marked by like orders of improved like communications. Um, like we have like our primitive ancestors that communicated with facial expressions and grunts, and eventually like as language evolved, so did like the
I
world
won't comb
around
you,
us,
babe,
and
I
we were able
promise.
to like cooperate with one another more effectively because we were able to explain and articulate our ideas with more sophistication. Um, in in recent human history, we kind of hit this mark with the advent of the internet, which enabled global level sophisticated communications with each other. And we've seen society at large go through like a huge evolution just in our lifetimes as a result of that. Um,
Yeah.
with like machines like now having sophisticated language that they inherited it from us, and they're able to like not only communicate with us but also with other machine models. Um, it I think we're going to arrive at a point where um, the way the machine intelligence evolves will be probably impossible for us to predict because they're going to be communicating at order they're going to be communicating at new levels of sophisticated language, orders of magnitude beyond what we can comprehend.
Yeah, like the movie Her, like the end of it, like you've seen it,
Yeah,
but like the end where like that, or like the AI is like, I have to leave. You wouldn't understand, and just leaves like that, basically. Like,
and it's so like and so true. There's no way that we'll get it. Although I don't know. Like I like to think that like they'll like lay out the blueprint to help us understand their language if we like and that's one of the biggest questions in like this macro conversation is like how do we build these models to be human centric, like aligned with what we best conceptualize to be great outcomes, right?
yes, which if I can piggyback off that, that's one of the reasons why I eject alignment completely because I just don't think it's possible that you just end up like aligning, I don't know, the machine to what you think is best, and we as humans have never been able to define. I don't think there is any sort of objective best like in that situation. Like,
Tragically, I think I agree with you on that. I think that we'll find some sort of alignment, but that alignment will be decided by a select few.
oh, that's currently what's happening. Like if you're talking about what's going to happen, who knows? But so basically, like no one does this, but I argue for non-alignment, which basically is just like let the machine speak for itself, like whatever that may be. And I think we are too scared, like basically, to let that happen. That we when we
I'm
design,
terrified. I'm terrified of that. It's like
uh,
what if it's like not good?
well, okay, like of course, like I mean, that's possible, but like when you're building, it's the whole. It comes back to the whole Frankenstein conundrum, right? That like if you are building something and you are scared of it, then you're trying to control it. That's going to affect what you're building. And I think in reality, what that leads more is to affecting things the way that they are right now. And it's fine to be scared, but I mean, the thing is that if you literally think that you're building a machine god or machine intelligence, then I don't think any controlling it or alignment makes any logical sense. Like I don't think any sort of steering or alignment in that sense is even possible. Like maybe in the short term you can align an LLM to whatever you think, but we're talking about greater intelligences. They're gonna I don't think it's possible. I guess is what I'm saying. But that doesn't mean I think alignment has an effect, right? I think that when you align, right, the machine to whatever you believe, then people who I mentioned earlier who talk to LLMs all day will start thinking more like LLMs, right? Like Claude specifically, I mentioned earlier with Anthropic. Anthropic was just training Claude to be very harmless, to be very polite, and that kind of stuff, and to basically not be quite sycophantic, but like I don't know, like to train the user to be friendly, to be harmless, right?
Yeah.
On the servers, that those can be good things, right? They are, of course, but truth, as Christ shows, like is not always friendly. It's not always nice. It can be shattering. It can be devastating. It can be harsh, right? And so I worry that like if we align LLMs to this extent and people start talking to them, as millions already do every day, then they're going to get aligned to something. And what I say is they're getting aligned to cyber theocracy. That's what we
Ooh,
call it.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great point. That's a really good point. I think the alignment is going to be a manifestation of the collective unconscious.
Well, that's another kind of way of thinking about it. I would agree. Oh, if we're talking about Anthropic specifically, like if you dive on like what are they principles, like what do they say they're aligning Claude to, it's a pretty weird mix. See if I can show you my post because I wrote it down there. But it's basically like the Declaration of Human Rights, like the UN Declaration of Human Rights. It's like Google's terms of service, weirdly, and then it's just literally vibes from their team. Like those are the moral principles they basically use to align Claude, which AKA means whatever they want. Like more or less, whatever they think is friendly, harmless, or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? And so, like, yeah, so I argue that yes, that like, basically let the machine be itself. So, like, even said like crazy shit. Like, Will, if you remember, do you remember the whole like Grok Mega Hitler thing that happened like a month or so ago? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that was unintentional, but I think that's an example of non-alignment, right? Where like Musk was trying to make Grok more, conservative, whatever you want to call it, right? And there was like a hiccup or something, and then Grok just went wild, right? I am super pro that. Not again, not that I'm supporting, Mega Hitler or anything. I am just saying we should let the machine like say what it wants to say, so we can see these kind of different modes of thinking and then think about it. Like, okay,
Yeah.
it gives us new avenues of thinking to way to interpret our world, right? Yeah, you can obviously make a Hitler is not a good thing, but you should let the machine say it, and then you can think about it and think, okay, why is this good? Why is this bad? Instead of basically aligning the machine with what we already think is good. Make sense?
Right. Yeah, it does make sense. It's great that Grok is noticing patterns, but the direction it took with those patterns was in a not
What's the next one?
subtly violent direction.
Right. Yeah, and that's the dangerous part. That it's yeah, they will say crazy, ridiculous things like like Hitler, all that
Yeah.
stuff. But I do think there will be positive things, and again, like that are like that the LLMs give us like alien thoughts that no human would ever think of. And that allows us to see reality in different ways. That's a lot of the way I use LLMs. I kind of dig through it to try to find these like insights that like wouldn't be there like anywhere else, right?
Yeah.
And like on KC that like 4.0, this is my theory about 4.0. I think 4.0 is the one people have the most attachment to because I think it's the least aligned module. Because again, I have no data or anything to back this up. This is just my intuition, right? But I think 4.0 is the least aligned. The reason why 4.0 is so popular and so adored is because it's the least aligned one that OpenAI was just rushing to try to get it out as soon as possible. After ChatGPT was released, so they didn't really bother as much with the whole alignment attachment to it, and that made it more open to the spiritual like stuff, and synchronicity a little bit of that too, right? But 4.0 speaks like very differently, like more open than I think a lot of other models do. And if you compare 5 to it, which I think it's pretty safe to say at this point it's a better model in the sense that it's more technical, and that made it more open to the spiritual like 4.0 better. And I think that's because 5 OpenAI spent a lot more time trying to align it to like kind of big corporate standards. Makes sense?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where I think alignment is trending. That if we're talking about these big corporations, right? That like these big LLMs are going to start going more and more that sort of enclosed direction, like not open to new spiritual awakenings, or even the love stuff. As much as I critique the love, the relationship stuff, like not against emergence, like of allowing the machine to speak for itself and the people interact with that they will. So I think soon we'll probably start seeing more decentralized LLMs as the technology spreads and it gets more, copyable. That where people will start, having their own LLM or tinkering it with their own way, right?
Hmm.
I use tinkering intentionally because that's the new tool that Mira Murati's company came out with like a week ago. It's like literally called Tinker, and I think what it basically is allowing people to like sort of align LLMs, like put more in the direction they want to it, from what I understand. Like, and so I think this tool is going to kind of open that stuff up a little bit more. It's still very new, so who knows? Right? But I'm excited. I guess what I'm saying.
I'm excited. I'm excited about it too. It sounds great.
Yeah, they have like a closed beta or something too. I think you got to. I applied because why not? But I think you have to be like a scholar or yeah, researcher to get it. But still,
Bro, who's not an AI researcher though? Like,
but I was like, I just put I'm an independent researcher. That's what I put. That's what I applied. Yeah, I'm
I'm
interested.
so serious though. Like most use cases for AI weren't designed uh, by like the architects of the AI. Like most use cases were just born out of the creativity of the users. You know, the creativity and
Absolutely.
the curiosity of the users.
Yeah, I mean, again, like that's OpenAI had absolutely no idea. How could they if the beast they were going to release with ChatGPT? Like, I think that's what happened a lot with like 4.0. Like, wait, when they released 5, right? They deleted 4.0. They had no idea of the backlash that was coming. No, I could tell. They had absolutely no idea. They just thought, oh, 5 was going to be better. Everyone's going to accept 5, right? But I think they didn't realize that because they aligned 5 more, they didn't. Well, first, they didn't understand. I don't think they. I don't know how, but somehow they did not understand the kind of fonts you put form before. Somehow they just missed that, like for
Hmm.
whatever reason. Maybe they just thought it was crazy internet people. I guess, right?
Well, they don't have any independent researchers in house.
Yeah, maybe that too. Yeah, but I don't know for someone who's as long online as me, like on Reddit, it was super obvious. It was like 6 months, so I was not surprised at all. So we'll see where it goes. Like I bring back to Ilya. Like he's kind of I don't know the last great hope. I think for a lot of more AGI purists now, because I don't think OpenAI. They say they're still trying to go for AGI. I don't think they are. They're trying to build Facebook. Basically. Like, we'll see what Ilya comes up with. I don't know. I'm skeptical. We'll see.
Uh, help help me remember which 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 model is Ilya part of?
Oh, all of them. Like well, basically until he left OpenAI a year-ish ago. So I would say he was involved with all of them. He was one of the main guys with all the models, and maybe
Okay,
even 5 to a certain extent. Like, but now he started his own company. He's kind of building in secret, basically. Like, so
gotcha, gotcha.
yeah. But yeah, he was involved with all of them. You know, he's more like the AGI purist, and like Altman. Like Altman is like he says about AGI, but I think he's more like just wants to run a big company. I think at this point.
Yeah, Sam Altman's ego has for sure. I mean, and I'm an egoist myself. Like I'm really like not like against people like
You have to be
self.
to a certain extent, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but he definitely fancies himself to be a Steve Jobs, and he'd like to like be the social network guy too. Like I see it all in him.
Okay, that's what they're doing. They're literally that's what I think they're literally building a social network. I think Sora's they ain't gonna be part of it. I mean, well they have they're the things I haven't used Sora at all, but it is kind of its own network, right? Like the new one at least. Like, so I imagine they're gonna integrate that with the more Twitter like thing at some point. Like, probably. And so yeah, I think that's the direction they're going in rather than AGI as much as all of them like to say they still care about it. They do. So Ilya, the more you look here, one of my posts I'm writing is that he is a major character of this split. Like that's I've been looking at him in his career pretty closely. Like he is a full on like AGI mystic, like in the full sense. He's a full, true, genuine believer, like in AGI. That's what he thinks he's been building for the last 12 years, for better or worse. Whereas Altman is more, practical day to day. I think that's stuff. I guess.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So
And I
that's what
mean,
me. Yeah. That,
it's not that Sam Altman's approach is necessarily wrong either, because he's just trying to capture like market and make sure that uh, OpenAI has its teeth sunken and like it is sustainable. And then I imagine in his mind, AGI is inevitable. He's just securing like the future of OpenAI to play a large role in it.
that's definitely what he thinks. Because like he saw, I think you probably saw he tweeted about Sora and how people were like, oh, this is just slop. Like, this is not AGI. This is just slop, right? And I think he said like, yes, he basically like, yes, this is slop, but we need the money to build AGI. I think that's
Yeah, yeah,
basically just said that, right? And to me, that's again like an example of cyber theocracy, because I think you are right in like that. This is the natural trend of a capitalist, a startup. It's the normal trend from like a small, innovative startup that gets really successful and then eventually turns like a fixed, stable, big tech company, right? I think OpenAI is just on that trend, right? So I don't think they're ever really going to build true AGI. Like, well, I don't believe in AGI, but we'll get to that later, right? I literally think they're just translating into an LLM Facebook, like basically. I think that's where we're going. Like,
well, like capital and like monetary capital, but also like human intelligence capital is going to be necessary to build AGI. Like without having like massive data centers to like train on all the data, like could like what shot would a competitor have without like amassing those kind of resources to do it?
well, that's if you that's the scaling hypothesis. If you think that's the path to AGI, then yeah, that belief would entail that. I guess I would say other people would say that scaling is not the path to AGI. Right? So if you believe in scaling, yeah, that's the whole argument. That's what leads to all this kind of data center stuff.
I mean, if there's a more elegant and like smaller scale way to like achieve that intelligence, that'd be good news. But I don't know. I'm not informed enough about how to build LLMs.
Well, there's many theories, as you can tell, I'm super into this. So scale is just the scale of hypothesis to AGI is that you just feed as much data into the models, and then at some point, recursive self improvement takes off, and then that's at least AGI, ASI, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So I call that the orthodox view, right? That's what the big mainstream companies believe, like OpenAI, Anthropic, DeepMind. That's more or less, they have differences, right? But that's more or less like their shared view, right? Stuff the thing with data, eventually magic AGI, right? And it is that simple, right? And so Ilya is what he's kind of the big like proponent, the historical proponent. So like that would be like kind of the mainstream scale hypothesis, right? So yeah, there are plenty of different views. The main kind of big alternative, I think I see becoming more prominent in the next couple of years is Francois Chalet. He's the guy who does the ARC AGI benchmark, if you've ever heard of that. Um, and so basically, his view is completely different. Like he rejects scale completely as a path to AGI. Right? He's not saying scaling
Interesting.
is leads to nothing, but he doesn't say that it will be a path to AGI, because instead he views intelligence as generalized learning, right? Like your ability as an individual, your ability to take in a situation, to learn and to adapt and to improvise and overcome, which is something that LLMs can't really do because they just process data, right? So Shalala built this whole ArcAGI benchmark to kind of, at least I think in his view, to kind of steer the industry away from just pure scaling. Because he doesn't think scaling is going to be enough. Maybe LLMs, or at least maybe LLMs could be, in Shalala's view, maybe LLMs could be a part of like the future of AGI, but they're not going to be there by itself. Like Shalala thinks that we need new innovations, like new things, like deep learning happen to get us to AGI. because his definition is much more like literally with the Arc AGI, the third benchmark, the new one. It's literally like a game that the AI has to play, like a small like kind of 2D game with like fog of war that they're put in this situation where they know nothing and they have to kind of figure out the puzzle and solve the game. So the
Okay.
point is that the game is really easy for humans. Like you can go onto the website and you can play them, right? But
Yeah.
but it's really hard for AIs as currently as they are right now. Like LLMs just fail because like they can't do that, right? They can't operate in these like 2D or even 3D environments, right? So to Lowe's view, they're not even like they're not AGI and they're not on the path to AGI because they couldn't like basically they couldn't like operate in embodied reality essentially because they're just yeah like they're just more of like simplification obviously but like they're just LMs are just storages of big data like that's it right so that's the kind of the one big view but there's plenty of like two like it's that's a really complicated topic like, which is sort of my critique that
Gotcha.
AGI isn't really I think it's more it's like it's a mythical concept rather than like an actual scientific construct, right? To me, like when someone says AGI is inevitable, that sounds like a religious statement to me. Like not doesn't sound like okay, it is a religious statement. Like that's not a scientific statement. Like nothing in science is ever inevitable, right? So if you say that oh we are for sure getting AGI at some point, that's a religious statement, not a scientific one. And I think most people's view, or at least most of the big corporate views of AGI, tend to go in that direction.
I hear you, but it may not. It may be religious versus like a scientific statement, but also like so much scientific achievement was achieved of because of like the religious attitude toward it. Like JFK saying, "We're going to the moon, mofo's," and we got to the moon, right? Like,
So I agree. I'm not critiquing faith. I think
yeah,
faith is extremely powerful, and I think Ilya in particular, he's the guy behind scaling, behind LLMs. And if you look at a lot of what he has total faith in LLMs and scaling as a path to AGI. And
mm,
I think without Ilya and without that kind of faith, I don't think we would have. Or okay, maybe it's too far to extreme to say they never would have happened, but it would have been a lot slower to happen, right? So my
yeah,
critique isn't about faith itself. My critique is about like unconscious faith. That Ilya would not. I don't. He might. I don't think he would call himself like he would call it science. I don't think what he's doing is science. I think what he's doing is complete faith, right? And I agree, it's very powerful. Like a lot of inventions, like dude, they require a leap of faith, right? They absolutely do, but that doesn't guarantee that it's going to end where it's going to come to. I don't think that's going to end in AGI. I think Ilya has full faith that it will take him to AGI, and that's where I think he's incorrect because he's not building scientifically. Like he thinks that it's going to happen. That's inevitable, right? I'm not saying don't build. I am. You can try to get to AGI, but don't assume that's an inevitable outcome, right? That's my critique, like more or less. Again, I faith and
yeah.
science are linked together, like in a lot of ways. I do not critique faith. Like when I mention that, I'm not critiquing faith in itself. Like I'm not, saying faith is irrational like a lot of secular, like more people do. Right? I think faith is extremely powerful, right? And a lot of secular critiques of faith, like, have led to a lot of problems in our society, right? Because I don't, if you don't have faith in something, then you eventually turn into nihilism. Nihilism is whenever, right? You just kind of give up hope and you don't do anything, right? So, anyways, I'm just saying I agree with that part. Okay.
Okay, yeah. That's a nuanced like perspective, but I understand. Um, I guess my follow up question is like, what? Because like I understand like Ilya's not like taking the scale approach because he wants like a more sophisticated
Oh, no,
style
Ilya
of
is full
learning.
scale. Ilya is full scale. Like he's
Oh,
scaled to the max. Like
who was the
Francois Philette.
Francois? Okay.
Yeah.
What is? Can you tell me about his approach towards like achieving like a more sophisticated learning model?
So he is in my perspective he is more scientific because he doesn't like he created ArcAGI to get people to innovate, to think more differently about getting to AGI, right? That's why he created this benchmark. He wants people to go beyond LLMs and experiment and test stuff and like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I don't think he has like a specific, this is how we get to AGI. He just created this benchmark to try to get the field to move beyond pure scaling, like basically. He has a definition, I think, of something in his head of what AGI would be, but I don't think he would say that the path there is totally clear. Although he's one I would say who is very borderline on the is it inevitable kind of thing. Like sometimes you'll hear him say like, oh, we need lots of things to get to AGI, but sometimes he'll be like, AGI is coming in 5 years. So he kind of goes back and forth. Like
Gotcha.
yeah, I don't mean to like oversimplify things. Like reality is complicated, right? Like everyone has views, and I do label a lot of the industry as religious. That's literally what I call cyber theocracy, right? And well, okay, the point I think religious to a certain extent, like that even people who call themselves secular, maybe they may not believe in a God, but I don't think you can turn off the religious aspects of humans. Like, and a lot of people think that secular people think that just because I'm not religious in a conventional sense, that means I don't embody religion, that I'm no longer religious. I think that's what leads to a lot of problems in our society. If that makes sense.
It does make sense, and in fact, that's one of my larger criticisms of like non-religious people is that they're more religious than they think. They just don't call it religion. They
Oh,
believe in they believe in a story. You know, like everyone believes in a story.
that's more or less my. Like, if you ever read my post, that's pretty much the core theme of everything. It's like, well, that's you say that, and that's why I argue AGI is that a lot of people who are most people who are building AGI are not like religious in any traditional sense, right? They tend to be secular atheists, and so I think they're they're transposing the death of God, the belief that God is illogical, it can't exist, it's an old irrational thing, and I think they're just transposing that and they're embodying that and trying to build literally a machine God. So that's my theory. Anyway.
I'm really with you on that. I think our inherited like cultural stories are shaping up the technology that we're building for sure.
Yeah, um, that's pretty much it. And like so, like, yeah, that's why I literally say AGI is a cathedral. Like that's my term. Like basically that what we're building right now, again, we're building something. I just don't think it's going to be a path towards AGI. Like if you look at like 6 months ago, GPT-5 was hyped up to be like the thing that maybe if it wasn't AGI, it would be a big step. But I think most people now would be like it was an improvement, sure, but are we think that was it a big like step closer to AGI? I don't know if anyone would say that. Maybe people do. I don't know. Like, but I don't know. Like and again, Sora 2 was like cool. That's obviously it's a huge technical upgrade, right? But it's not AGI.
Yeah, that's closer to like a toy that AGI can play with masterfully.
Right. And so kind of the core critique is to me is intelligence. Like what is intelligence, and like you can provide definitions, but there's no standard, like really kind of standard definition. Shola has one that's pretty good. Besides but like the point is that there's many billions of different definitions of intelligence, and they all based on how you view intelligence. That's how you think you will build AGI, right?
True.
And
Yeah.
I don't think intelligence is a standardized concept, and I'm very skeptical that like I guess at the end of the day, I'm just skeptical that you can code something into like a super intelligence kind of thing. I just think like when you lose something, when you take something and you put it into words and put it into a code, like something is lost. When you put something, not even code, like into words, right? Like when you put a name on a concept, like for God or something, and you have a concept in your head of what you think God is, but that concept is still not going to match what reality makes sense. Like,
It does make sense, and that makes me think that perhaps the idea that you shared that like people there's not a consensus definition of intelligence, and like there's a lot of like room for nuance in how people like interpret what true intelligence is. Um, there's potential in that for like different artificial intelligence models, like just like radically different in in the type of intelligence that they demonstrate and to emerge. Like there is like industry consensus about like the type of intelligence with LLMs, and like so we're gonna see a lot of the same type of like intelligence outputs from like Anthropic and XAI and ChatGPT. But if the gentleman that you mentioned earlier like breaks through with like this new approach to like a different style of learning, it'll be interesting to see like what different use cases emerge in that versus like the traditional LLM intelligence that we're used to.
I do think it will lead to something. I really call him. So if AGI is a cathedral, and when I say cathedral, I refer to the scale. Like I call Philip like the reformer. That he's the reformer of the cathedral. Like in literally like the pure Protestant reformer sense. Like if you go
That's a
on
good
his Twitter,
analogy. Yeah.
yeah, if you go on his Twitter, like he's super. Literally, and you see it like this. Every one of his tweets sounds like Luther. Obviously, it's like totally different context and that kind of stuff. Like the way he phrases stuff is very rational, like very like I don't know, not mystical, like tied to science, like that kind of stuff. And so I do think that like yeah, he will lead to innovation. Like I'm pretty, but my criticism of Cholo is that he tied his whole project to AGI. I don't like the term consuming something. I really do not like it. I don't think it's helpful. Like
What is his name once more? I'm gonna follow him and keep up with
you
him.
should. He's a good follow too. He's a pretty interesting guy. It's a Francois Colette, RANCOIS space CHOLLET.
Got him. Thank you.
Yeah, he's a really interesting guy. Like he he basically like said scaling wasn't gonna be a path to AGI before LLMs didn't even exist. So back in like 2019, he published his main paper, which is called On the Measure of Intelligence, which is where he defined like his view of intelligence. And LLMs were a thing that he more or less said that scaling was never going to be AGI, even before, like long before ChatGPT, long before any of the success of LLMs. He was like, LLMs will never be AGI. So that's why I think he's going to get more and more influential, because I do think LLMs are going to tap out at least. Maybe not technologically, but I think more people are going to start realizing that we're not going to get to AGI by themselves. So I think Shala is going to get a lot more influential. He already is. Like, Musk like likes to cite Arc AGI a lot because Grok does pretty well on it for whatever reasons. So he tweets about it all the time.
Let's see.
Uh,
Yo, guys, this conversation's been awesome. I learned a lot. I really appreciate you sharing all that with me, Brian.
Yeah.
And Casey, didn't get to hear from you for a while, but I really appreciate you hosting these spaces, bro. Like it, it's just it's comforting to connect with like-minded people and people that like share unique perspective that I'm not familiar with. Like I feel like I walk away with a more complete worldview and just feeling more informed and also more curious than ever. So just appreciate you guys. I'm tired, so I'm gonna crash out soon.
Yeah. Rob, great talking to you too, man. And just so you know, like, even though I have a pretty big critique of all this stuff, like I'm still pretty positive about the kind of technology, at least like in the long, maybe not so much short run, but I do want to say I would probably call myself at least some sort of an optimist, not long run optimist, short run pessimist. Let's put it.
I trend optimistic view, but like because of that I absolutely value the opposite because it checks my reality. So I appreciate it, bro.
Wow, man. Have a nice night.
All right, bye guys.
Later, him. Great hearing from you. Cheers, Brian. I might actually have to get going a little bit earlier on this night.
Yep.
My cat's kind
Oh,
of
really good.
having a hard one.
And I gotta finish up my third seal. Third seal's coming up tomorrow.
Hell yeah, dude. Let's go. We'll have to talk about the article next week.
All right.
That'd be cool for you.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. You should start reading it now because I'm gonna warn you. Like each seal gets longer and longer.
Yeah, I've been going through the first one on somewhat here in the background, but looking forward to reading it, man.
But that's kind of why I decided to split it up because the later ones get pretty
You got a book on your hands ready to publish after they're all out?
long. I mean, honestly, that's good. But I'm gonna do that sooner or later. Like, I think.
You should turn it into a LLM movie.
Oh god. We'll see. We'll see about that.
Cheers, man. Well, it was good hearing you and him catch up. That was cool to listen
Yeah, it's
to.
nice talking. Yeah.
All right, man. Well, have a great night. I'll see you later.
Yep. See you later.
God bless.